Hey, who are you?
I'm Michael A. Grimm, multi-voice reviewer. And don't let me catch you guys in Indiana. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, 'tis I, Michael A. Grimm, aka multi-voice reviewer. I have many voices, but one opinion. And I thought, right now I'm a little disappointed. I don't have any views on my Indiana Jones Trilogy review all of a sudden. I mean, what the hell's going on here? I mean, is everybody losing interest of Indiana Jones all of a sudden? I mean, come on! The hell? But I hope I don't get any less views on this one here. Right now, I decided to honor and pay tribute to a certain comedian who I admire. And that comedian is Leslie Nielsen. That's right. I may mention Leslie Nielsen. I mean, one thing not many people know. Leslie Nielsen was, when he started acting, he didn't start it out as a comedian. He started out as a dramatic actor. He didn't do anything funny until he had a role on Airplane. But before that, he appeared in a lot of dramatic movies and TV shows. Heck, he had an appearance with, he did do an appearance of that TV show called The Fugitive, made way back in the 50s. You know, the story about a guy named Dr. Richard Kimball who got blamed for the death of his wife, and he was innocent, so he escaped and trying to clear his name and kept telling the cops that it was a one-armed man who murdered his wife throughout the entire show. And Leslie Nielsen, he just played one of the guys who started to notice some things. Anyway, ever since he got the role on Airplane, he becoming more like, I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. And one thing he did was pretty funny is he brought his fart machine, which is supposed to be like some kind of rubber tube with a small hole at both ends, and when you put it on your hand, it makes a sound. He even make everybody behind the scene laugh with his fart machine, going like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? It's really nice to see you here. I mean, it's really nice and pretty awesome to see you around here. I mean, it is really good." He even makes it a lot funnier if he licks his hand, it makes it sound a lot wetter. But after Airplane, that's when he decided to change his acting career, since he wasn't getting any work as a dramatic actor, and believe it or not, he did audition for Ben-Hur, but never got the part. And I did mention that he appeared in Forbidden Planet, so he was pretty much the first captain of a spaceship crew before Captain Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard and all the others from Star Trek. But anyway, ever since Airplane, they decided to expand his comedic career, since he had a unique talent of being funny with a straight face. I mean, he just makes things funny by just going like, "The truth hurts, doesn't it? Oh, sure. Not like riding a bicycle with a seat missing, but it hurts." Yeah, it's not pretty often that you just wake up out of bed, walk in the middle of the street, and sticking your face in the fan. But anyway, the most hilarious franchise he ever done was, of course, the short-lived TV series of Police Squad and the movie spin-off they made, the Naked Gun Trilogy. So therefore, I'm going to talk about Leslie Nielsen's Police Squad and the Naked Gun Trilogy. Now, one thing I have to say about the show, it was short-lived because it had a lot of jokes in the movie, but sometimes the jokes are just over people's heads, because there were a lot of jokes you would have... there were a lot of funny Easter eggs around the scene, that you should have paused it in order to catch it, but it was during television at the time, and it was way before people starts taping it, or recording it on TiVo, or have it on Netflix. So one thing I gotta say here, that the show itself, it... Sorry. Somebody should have told me they should have their mic off when I'm doing my review. But anyway, in the show, I mean, there was only 6 episodes they made, and then it was canceled. And the first one's got to do with this girl. She wanted money so bad, so she killed her boyfriend and got money out of his area, and also killed an innocent bystander and made it look like a murder. One thing I couldn't get over is when the girl shot the guy, he was going like this. It's like he's extremely thirsty. But Frank, as usual, figured out who the killer was, and it was that girl, and got her arrested. Secondly, called the it's about this guy who owns the boxing ring, and he tried to make sure they're rigged. But it turns out one boxer, he was supposed to take a dive, but sadly, he got up and knocked out his opponent. So he didn't take a dive. But the owner made an example out of him, so he had one of his henchmen have him killed. Now there's another boxer who his life is hanging by his thread. So, and they wanted him to take a dive, but Frank Drebin, pretended to be his manager, helped him out, and also saved his girlfriend that he loved. Well, his wife, actually. And made him become a hero, once again. And the other one is about a rich girl who got kidnapped, and it turned out the butler did it. The same old mystery cliches, the butler did it. Now let's see. That's funny, I keep on forgetting the other story they done. But the other one I remember, there was this 2 goons who decided to rough up the place, especially the girl who runs a ballet class. I mean, she's pretty much in debt with those goons, and they beat her up. So now Frank Drebin disguised himself as a locksmith owner who works on keys and try to have her protected. You know, that's the thing. One thing that bothers me is goons who always like to rough up people. I mean, if anybody don't even learn how to stand up against those who bullies them, this entire place would be a scum-sucking of a cesspool.
Hey, Michael, please, I'm trying to eat this tuna fish sandwich.
Rat-infested, blood-bubbling boil.
Michael, cut it out, will you? I'm talking to my mother.
Anyway, trying to do some technical stuff. Anyway, the show itself, it just only lasted for like 6 episodes. Oh yeah, and there's also a woman who owns a club, and anybody who double crosses her would kill them, and she's smuggling cocaine. Of course, they say drugs because, well, cannot name certain drugs back then, but now. But even though the show had ended, they decided to make 3 best Naked Gun movies that it was unbelievable. The first one, now, when I was a kid, I haven't seen the Police Squad when I was young because it didn't come out on TV often. But I remember when I go to my grandma's house or my mom's place, and I see... The first one I saw was, of course, Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad. On this one, some of the characters are recast. His Captain Ed is replaced by George Kennedy, and Norberg is replaced by O.J. Simpson. And it was O.J. Simpson way before he killed his wife. And yes, I know, he did it. It's obvious. Just people are just too stupid to realize it. God, I hate Johnny Cochran. Anyway, turns out that there were a bunch of bad guys who were smuggling drugs from one country to the next. And it turns out that the main bad guy is a legendary Makoto Motoban. Hello, I am Makoto Motoban. Some of you might know me in that Star Trek movie where I play Khan. Khan! And of course you have, give me a sec. Priscilla Presley, that's right, the wife of the legendary Elvis Presley, she shows up and becomes the love interest for Frank Drebin. At first, he wasn't too sure if she was going to be good or bad, and Frank Drebin thought that she was working with Rakato Montalban, but it turns out she walked up to him and she says, "Me and Vincent Ludwig," that's Rakato Montalban's character, she said, "There's nothing between us. He likes East German men. What about you?" "I like cops." And all the cops are going like, hey, how you doing? You know, it would be pretty funny if a very beautiful and attractive woman says, I like comedians who are on YouTube. I'll be like, hey, how you doing? I hope you like impressions. Anyway, turns out that Vincent Ludwig, aka Rakato Montalban, he's planning to assassinate Queen Elizabeth, who's coming all the way to New York. Of course, that's where Frank Drebin lives. Imagine that. But of course, Frank Drebin foiled, even though the mayor didn't believe him. And I couldn't believe the conversation between him and the mayor. It was like this. "Oh, Mr. Drebin, I hope it ain't going to be another incident like you did on the South Side. That's my policy." "Yeah, well, you see a bunch of guys dressed in toga planning to stab someone, I shoot the buzzard. That's my policy." "That was a Shakespeare in the Park of Julius Caesar, you moron. You kill 5 actors. Good ones." But anyway, after the first movie was a huge success, they decided to do it again by doing a sequel called Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. The Smell of Fear! Again, don't call me Shirley. Anyway, the bad guy this time is, of course... Robert Goulet. Now, it's kind of funny, though, because in the Naked Gun Trilogy, one thing I remember, they always have special guests in the show, but all they do is appear in the intro and get themselves killed in the intro. And Robert Goulet, he played a guy who is on the firing range ready to be executed. And now he plays a bad guy in the sequel. I mean, I saw William Shatner there. He gets poisoned when he was in a diner. I mean, he was having dinner in a restaurant with some lady. A guy tries to shoot him, so he shoot back, but when he took a wine, he went like... But anyway, in this one, it turns out that there was this doctor who starts trying to tell the world that they don't need nuclear power for a better world. We need something more environment related and more something to save the world without nuclear stuff involved. Since there's the guy who's the owner of toxic waste called Spill, owner of Smoke, and the other one, owner of Kaboom. And they're all in charge by Quentin Hatzberg, which is Robert himself. Robert Goulet. And of course, turns out that that Priscilla Presley, I guess the relationship didn't go well between the two, so I guess they kind of put on a break, I guess, or maybe they got dumped somehow. But somehow, and also she always thinks that Frank Drebin is jealous over this guy that she's with, Robert Goulet. Until he kind of proved to her that he was a bad guy and he was involved of planning to kidnap the professor and have him replaced with a look-alike. An actor who knows how to look exactly like him and talks like him. So now, Drebin, his friend Ed, his captain and friend Ed, and Norberg are trying their best to stop him. And of course, with a little bit of Jane's help. And now, let's get to the third one. Naked Gun 33 and a third. In this one, oh yeah, there is this one bad guy who only appeared in part 2 and now part 3. He calls himself Mr. Papschmear. Ugh. Oh yeah, and another thing I also remember in Naked Gun, they're created by the Zucker brothers who makes all those comedies. And if you start noticing, their mother appeared on those Naked Gun movies. In the first movie, she plays a secretary who works with Rakato Motoban, and she was the one that Rakato Motoban hypnotized her, picking up a gun, tried to kill Papschmear, but it was empty. And then he got her out of the hypnotism and went like, "Oh, there's a gun on the floor." And of course, her second appearance was on Naked Gun 2, where not Quentin Hathberg, but the professor, Leslie Nielsen, accidentally spilled coffee on the lap and on the wheelchair, and now the wheelchair guy just went through the moon, and you can see their mother chatting with other women on the table. And on the 33 and a third, she plays a nurse who tells Leslie Nielsen to take a number, and he's like, 6. Is 6 taken? Or does it have to be between 1 and 10? Oh yeah, and also Anna Nicole Smith is in this. Now, one thing I remember about Anna Nicole Smith is that she's a former Playmate model, so she had posed naked to some magazines. And of course, the one thing I remember is that she married to an old man. Hey, you're an old man and you marry somebody so hot. It's every guy's dream. Anyway. But it's too bad she passed away too. Too many drugs, I guess. But the bad guy in this one, is, of course, Fred Ward. Fred Ward, he plays a bad guy named Rocco Dillon, who is planning to blow up the Academy Award. So now it's up to Frank Drebin, Jane, and of course, Ed and Norberg to trying to stop them for blowing up the Academy Award. And of course, and also him and Jane has a bit of a problem. She wants to have a baby. She wants to be pregnant. But he's just not ready for it. And he promised her that he retired from Police Squad, but Ed and Norberg wanted him back on the force. Even though he said he'd given up police work, but one thing he does miss: to have a gun pressed to his thigh. The thrill of a chase, to be a man. Oh yeah, and I do love that one joke on number 2 where they're supposed to hide this bad guy, and they went to a sex shop, and the lady who owns the store, she said, "Is this some kind of bus?" And Leslie Nielsen looked down at her cleavage and said, "Yeah, they're nice." Oh well. My favorite on the third one is when the bad guy, of course, Fred Ward, he pointed his gun in the air and fired a couple of times. He said, "All right, nobody moves and nobody gets hurt." Oh! Well, from now on. But of course, as usual, Rocco Dillon gets killed, and so does Pap Schmear. So that's pretty much end the whole series. And also, Jane gets pregnant, so Norberg and Leslie Nielsen and Norberg, well, O.J. Simpson, took him to the hospital, and the lady gave birth to a black baby, and he was like, "Norberg, you get back here!" It turns out they were in the wrong room, because Jane has a child, and of course Ed shows up saying, "Frank, it's a boy! I know!" Man, it's movies like these, it makes me miss Leslie Nielsen a lot. I really do miss him. I really do miss his sense of humor and his dry sense of humor. Always saying something funny with a straight face. Kind of like, well, Buster Keaton was more of a physical comedian, not a joke teller. But he always does physical comedy with a straight face. But anyway, this is my review of the Police Squad in Color and the Naked Gun Trilogy. So for those of you who likes this review of the Naked Gun Trilogy and Police Squad, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe. And for those of you who don't like my review, why don't you admit it? The truth hurts, doesn't it? Oh sure, not like riding a bicycle with a seat missing, but it hurts. Anyway, so long.
Story from the